Alright guys, we're going to take a change of pace really quick and we're going to talk about graphing inequalities. And so we're moving away from equations for just a day. We're going to talk about inequalities again, which if y'all will remember are the less than, greater than signs. So we're going to graph some inequalities. The reason why we're going to spend time doing this is because it's a little bit different than graphing a line. Here is our first line. I've got y is less than 4/3 x minus 4. If you remember what we learned when we did slope-intercept form, this is your slope and this is your y-intercept. And so I begin to graph the same way I have always graphed. I'm going to start by plotting my y-intercept, which is -4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to use my slope to get to the next point. My slope is 4/3, so I have to go up 4 and over 3. So from here I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 3. And I can graph a line from here. Now I'm not just going to connect this and have a line. I'm going to have to draw a line, and when I draw a line for this one, it's going to have to be a dotted line. And the reason it's going to have to be a dotted line is because this is just less than. It is not less than or equal to. And if you remember when we graphed inequalities before with the open circle and the closed circle, if it was just less than, you had to put an open circle on your graph because it meant that point was not included. Now that we're drawing a line, I have to do an open line because this line is not part of the answer. And the only way to show an open line is to draw it dashed instead of solid. So I'm going to do a dashed line. And so there is my dashed line. And because this is less than, I'm going to have to shade. And I'm going to have to shade all the points less than my line. I'm going to make my line a little bit longer though, so that it goes all the way through the graph. I have to shade everything that is less than this line. And here is how I'm going to do this, okay? If I were a point on this line, say right here, okay? In order to be less than this point, less than this -4 that I have right here, it's got to be numbers that are this direction. These are the numbers that are less than that -4. That means that everything down here has to get shaded because that's the less than part. So you get to shade all of this to show your inequality is graphed. So if it is less than, you get a dashed line and then you shade below the line to show that those are the things that are part of the solution. This is your answer. That's all you have to do. So let's do the next one. I have y is greater than 5 halves x minus 4. So I'm going to graph again. I'm going to start at -4. But this time I have to go up 5 and over 2. So I'm going to go up 5 and over 2. And just like before, I'm going to draw a line, and it still has to be a dashed line because this is only greater than. It does not have the greater than or equal to. So I have to have a dashed line. And then I have to shade points greater. And here is how I determine that. Again, I go to my y-intercept, and points greater than my y-intercept will be up here because numbers bigger than -4 are up. That tells me that I have to shade everything on this side of the line to show my solution. Okay, so any point inside this shaded area is a solution to this inequality, and there are a whole bunch of them. But points inside the shaded area count, points outside the shaded area don't. Since it is a dashed line, points on the line also do not count. Okay, so less than or greater than means that you have a dashed line. That's going to be important later. If it is less than, you shade below. And if it is greater than, you shade above. So let's do a couple more examples. This one right here, -2y minus x is less than or equal to -8. Now I have the or equal to part. It's going to change the kind of line I get to draw. But this is not solved for y, so I cannot graph it yet. I've got to get y by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is add x to both sides. So I have -2y is less than or equal to -8 plus x. And then I have to divide everything by -2. And if you'll remember our rule, when dividing by a negative, this inequality symbol has to flip. So I end up with y is greater than or equal to, see, -8 divided by -2 is 4. And then this becomes, because there's a 1 in front of this x that's invisible, this becomes minus because of that negative, 1/2 x. So my slope is -1/2. My y-intercept is 4. So I'm going to start at 4. And from there, I get to go down 1 and over 2. So I'm going to go down 1, over 2. And since this is greater than or equal to, when I draw my line this time, I get to do a solid line because this line will be included in the answer. What I mean by that is that points on this line count as solutions. Any point on this line is a solution to this inequality because of that or equal to right there. Now I got to talk about the shading. Because it flipped and my answer is now greater than, it means I've got to shade everything up from the y-intercept, so I get to shade above the line, so all right there. So look at this next one. 4x is less than or equal to -4. There is no y value here. So I can't put it in y equals slope-intercept form. I can't do y equals mx plus b because there's not a y. But I can get x by itself. So in order to do that, I'm going to divide by 4. And so I end up with x is less than or equal to -1. And I want you to go back and I want you to remember this. When we learned VUX, V means you have a vertical line, U means the slope is undefined, and X means that the equation is always X equals, or in this case, X is less than or equal to. Since all I have is an X and I have no Y, that tells me that this is a vertical line that passes through where X equals -1. So it's going to be a line that goes straight up and down at X is -1. And since I have a less than or equal to, I get to do a solid line again right through that point at X equals -1. And so there is the graph of my line, but I'm also going to have to shade. Shading vertical lines is really easy. Okay, here's my vertical line. Points bigger than -1 are to the right. Points smaller than -1 are to the left. So I want less than, which means I get to shade all over here. So here's something else to remember. Less than or equal to or greater than or equal to means I have a solid line. And just like with before, less than means I shade below. Greater than means I shade above. And if it's vertical, you get to shade left or right instead of up or down, but it's the same kind of deal. One last one. We're going to solve this inequality for y first. So I have 2y minus 3x is greater than or equal to 12. I want to get the y by itself, so I'm going to start by adding 3x to both sides. So I have 2y is greater than or equal to 12 plus 3x. And then I have to divide everything by 2. Since the 2 is positive, it gets to stay greater than or equal to. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 3 divided by 2 just becomes 3 over 2x. And so let's graph. I start at 6. And from there I get to go up 3 over 2, but I can't count up 3 and over 2, so I have to go backwards. Instead of going up 3 and right 2, I'm going to go down 3 and left 2. It's the same thing because down is a negative direction, left is a negative direction, and the two negatives make the positive. So I'm going to count down 3 and right 2. It's the same slope, I promise, because if you go from this point to this point, you go up 3 and right 2. That is the right angle that gets made. And since this is a greater than or equal to, I get a solid line through those 2 points. So, and then I get to shade everything that is greater. And so from here, things that are greater are up, so I get to shade this part of my graph. So all the points inside that shaded area and on that line count as solutions. So that's how we graph an inequality. Those are things to remember. This is what you will work on tomorrow in class. Have a good evening. I'll see you tomorrow.